Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday before Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining us today. We've got two great presenters. And we'll begin here shortly with their presentations. I'm just gonna give a quick Detroit 2030 district update. Feel free to introduce yourself if you'd like to put your name and organization in the chat. And if you don't mind just keeping yourself on mute and your camera off until we are ready for questions. But throughout the presentation, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I'm going to be monitoring those. But there will also be an opportunity for you to just take yourself off mute and ask questions in the end. So I wanted to thank Andrew Lashak, and I have that correct, from Sapient, and Vimala Anishetty from Fishbeck for being here today to present to us. So I know several people in here are already familiar with the Detroit 2030 district, but we are the third largest 2030 district in North America. We just had a couple million square feet that joined our program this week, which is very exciting. So we are well above our 59 million square feet committed to the program and growing. And that is very exciting for us and the district. We have over 24 districts across the US. In several major cities. And there we go. In Michigan, we have 3 districts, Ann Arbor, Detroit, and Grand Rapids, who we often collaborate closely with. We are aiming to reduce carbon emissions in the city of Detroit. So we are working with our building members on things such as reducing energy and water consumption, first by helping them with benchmarking and understanding how their buildings are performing, and then helping to bring programs and resources, pilots to those building members to help them find ways to make these reductions happen. Last year, we hosted the 2030 Network Summit, which is held annually in a different city across the US. So we hosted it in Detroit. And during that time, all of the 2030 districts got together and said, you know, we're getting closer to 2030. We should talk about what that means and for us as an organization and our work going forward. So they adopted this new goal, accelerating to zero beyond 2030, and looking to reduce emissions from the entire built environment by 50 to 65% by 2030, and then reaching zero emissions by 2040. And so when we talk about zero emissions, what are some of the things we're talking about? I already mentioned energy efficiency, electrification, clean grids, and renewable energy, reduced embodied emissions. So these are all topics of interest and that we try to bring resources to some of these for our building members. So we do have 3 member types. We have our building members, and like I said, those are the property owners and managers. We also have professional stakeholders like Sapient and Fishbeck that fund our program and support us in that way. And we also have community stakeholders that are other nonprofits, environmental organizations in Detroit that we partner with. Some of these numbers are slightly outdated. As I mentioned, we had a few buildings join our program this week alone, but we are nearing 500 buildings enrolled in our program, and we have a little over 40 professional stakeholders and 40 community stakeholders that we collaborate with. This is our board of directors, and I think we have a few on here. I can't see everybody who's joined, but a few of our board members are here, so thank you. A few familiar faces, or faces you might recognize. We have 3 best practice groups that meet on a quarterly basis. We have a houses of worship group, a multifamily group, and a venue group that was formerly the venue museum group, but the museum group has gone national, so there's now a group of museums across the country that meet through their best practice group. Our house of worship has also turned into a treasure hunt program that Connie has led 2 cohorts through, as well as several volunteers. I think some of them are on the call today. And this is, I believe, a 6-month program that helps walk houses of worship through various energy, climate, electrification, sustainability topics for their house of worship. These are some pictures from the first cohort in 2021. This is a very exciting tool that some of you are familiar with. It's the DTE Hub. DTE partnered with us 2.5 years ago, specifically on this hub that provides ongoing monthly aggregated whole building data that is directly input into an Energy Star portfolio manager. This is still in a pilot phase, so it's only being offered to Detroit, Ann Arbor, and now Grand Rapids 2030 district building members, but this is something that I help our building members get enrolled with and set up. We also run the Detroit Energy Challenge in partnership with the City of Detroit and Michigan Battle of the Buildings, and we have an annual awards breakfast in June. Next year, in order to participate, you have to sign up and get your data entered in an Energy Star portfolio manager. The competition is going to compare the 2023 data to the 2022 data to identify who are Detroit's biggest losers. And also save the date for the 10th annual Michigan Energy Summit in Grand Rapids on May 8th. And that's where the statewide recognition will happen. This is a new pilot that Connie is actually leading, so she would be able to speak more to this, but we're really excited because we're offering an EV charging station pilot to our building members. And I believe that the application is open right now, and I can put that link in the chat if anybody's interested, or just follow up with Connie or myself. We also partner with Green Living Science, one of our community stakeholders, and trying to help them expand recycling they're trying to add 1,000 multifamily buildings into the City of Detroit's new commercial recycling program. Lastly, just wanted to say thank you to our platinum stakeholders for their support of 2030, and to our funding partners, and to all of our professional stakeholders that help support us. And then I mentioned several ways you can join as a member. If you're interested, just follow up with Connie or myself. I just wanted to briefly mention that we do have a new membership level that we just are launching now for any of our building members that are looking for additional support from us. We are happy to help. And again, this is some information we can share via email. Just reach out to us. And these are different ways you can follow us. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to let Vimala introduce herself while I pull up her slide deck. Vimala, I think I'm sorry, I just realized you were on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vimala Anishetty, and I work for Fishbeck. A little bit about my background. I have a PhD in environmental sciences from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, and 31 years of experience in the environmental field. I was at Ford Motor Company in our corporate environmental office for the first 15 years of my career. And then I founded and ran my own environmental consulting firm for 16 years. And I'm glad to report that we were a tier 1 supplier for General Motors, Chrysler, Nissan. We also did federal government work, and I was a prime contractor for US EPA, Army Corps of Engineers, Veterans Affairs, and so on. And I joined Fishbeck about 3 months ago. And that's I guess, my introduction. I want to start by thanking all of you for attending today and giving your attention to my presentation to a topic that is near and dear to my heart, ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Next slide, please, Kendall. We hear the words ESG a lot. So I hear it in regular type circles, but I also hear it in non-environmental circles anymore. But lots of times I start talking and people go, what is ESG? We hear about it, but we don't know what it stands for. So it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it's a means of determining an organization's non-financial risks and opportunities. What does that mean? Investors and the SEC has always been invested and in knowing what a company was doing in the financial space. You know, how are the high interest rates going to affect them? What's the labor market going to do to the bottom line? Or what is the raw material situation, and so on. And they used to getting those types of financial disclosures from the company. But more and more, as people began to realize the importance of sustainability and ethical issues, you know, the investors and the public wanted more of that from the companies as well. And ESG was born from this desire from the investors and the public to know about an organization's performance on various sustainability and ethical indices. So E, S, and G, environmental, social, and governance, are the three pillars of this framework. Next slide. And why is ESG important right at this moment? In March of 2022, the US Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, veiled plans to require climate-related disclosures from public companies. And this was met with resounding appreciation and encouragement from all the investors. So we know this is going to go forward, the climate-related disclosures. Next, lots of governments, EU has already done this, and several member EU countries are starting to pass ESG regulations. In our own state, in April of 2022, the Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy, EGLE, released the My Health Climate Plan to reduce greenhouse gases, GHG, emissions, and to avert the adverse impacts of climate change and to enable Michigan to become carbon neutral by 2050. And because of all these and because of their own interests, the large OEMs such as General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford are now requiring their suppliers to develop and communicate their own ESG programs, and they're requiring more disclosures from their tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. In addition to all of these, if you happen to represent a city or a county or a tribe, ESG or climate or sustainability disclosures become important because of grant applications. Quite a lot of the EPA grants, to apply for the grant, the threshold is to have an ESG or a sustainability or a climate action report. Even if some of these grants don't require the reports at the outset, if they don't say that's a threshold, they are going to give you more points for having the reports. So if it's a competitive grant and you have this report and you get more points, then you're more likely to get the grant. So it's also important then for ESG reports to be developed by counties and cities and municipalities and tribes. So all of these combined make this moment a pivotal moment for ESG and ESG related topics and plans, programs, and reports because they're being required from various different angles for almost all of the sectors. You know, be it private sector companies or organizations, you know, healthcare facilities and education facilities, everybody is paying attention to ESG programs, and there is a requirement in the marketplace, you know, for entities to help them set these goals, achieve these goals, develop these programs. Next slide. And as I'd mentioned before, these are the three pillars of ESG. That's the environmental, social, and governance. Next slide. And when we talk about environmental, you know, I thought mentioning some examples is enough to, it will be a good start. But right at the outset, I must say that not all of these topics will be relevant to all of the organizations. So I'm just showing these as examples. These topics may or may not be relevant to your particular organizations. And there might be some other topics that I haven't mentioned in my examples that might be relevant to you. So with that lens in mind, let's go through these examples. Back up a slide. The environmental topics include GHG emissions, the criteria pollutant emissions, carbon neutrality, waste management. We hear a lot of waste management type topics, zero waste to landfill seems to be a very big one. Recycling, reuse, all of those type of topics, energy use, pollution control. Next. And the social topics, again, anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, workplace diversity, community involvement, volunteering type hours. All of these are the social topics that get reported on. Next. Governance topics. This is how an organization is run. How transparent is the organization? What is the board of directors look like? Is there diversity in the board of directors? What is the corporate management structure? What are the corporate policies? Have they adopted anti-corruption policies? What are their business ethics? These type of topics make up the governance pillar. Next. And once, we've gone through all of these, and once again, I must mention that it is extremely important right at the outset for a organization and organization, be it a company or be it a county or a city, to decide on which topics and metrics are relevant to the success of their organization. So, first we identify that there is a need to develop an ESG program. So this organization says, yes, let's have an ESG program. Once there is a willingness to do that, the first thing we do is to assemble a team to work on this program. And then this team can be made up of people that are internal to the organization or people that are external or a combination thereof. And as I keep going back to it, we have to identify the topics and metrics that are most relevant to the organization. That is the foundation of the program. Let's identify those that are most relevant to you. There is no need to add everything into the program. And also know that at the beginning of the program, you can have fewer topics and fewer metrics that you're tracking, knowing that you could add more as you progress along, and you can add more or take some on or take some off every year as you revisit the program. And once these topics and metrics have been identified, the next order of business is to start collecting and compiling the information. If you're going to do greenhouse gases, you say, what are my emission sources? Where are they coming from and how am I going to collect the information? So you make a plan then on how this information is going to be collected and compiled. And then once you have that, you set targets and goals. Can you achieve zero waste to landfill? If not, can you achieve 50% waste to landfill reduction and so on? So you set targets and goals. And once you have all of these, all of the different parameters, then you start to develop an ESG report. ESG reports are variously called ESG report or sustainability report or climate report. They pretty much all have similar parameters going into them, but different organizations call it, different nomenclatures. And once we've started to develop the program, we identify the stakeholders and say, who is going to be interested in this information? The employees of the organization are going to be interested. My customers, my suppliers, my community. So we want to identify the stakeholders that are interested in the organization and that are, looking forward to receiving the report. And once the stakeholders have been identified, then you select a platform for report sharing. Are we going to put this on our website? Are we going to do an email blast? Are we going to do a combination? Do you hand out these printed reports at the annual shareholders meeting, and so on? But the most important part is to communicate it effectively, write an effective report and communicate it effectively. So that's the basis of creating an ESG program. Next. As soon as we mention ESG programs, especially for our private sector clients and industries, we talk about greenhouse gases. What are greenhouse gases? These are gases that trap heat in the atmosphere, and they include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. And as you can see from this pie chart, the bulk of the greenhouse gases, almost 80%, is carbon dioxide, which is why we place so much importance on carbon dioxide emissions. Next. And the first step in looking at GHGs is to create a GHG inventory. And again, with GHG inventory comes the jargon that goes with it. Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. What are these? Scope 1 emissions are the direct emissions. These are typically combustion of fuels. If you have natural gas in the building, natural gas boilers, emissions from those would be Scope 1. And if there are vehicles that are owned by the organization itself, not the vehicles owned by the employees, but if the organization itself owns vehicles, the emissions coming off of those vehicles, that's Scope 1 or direct emissions. Scope 2 is indirect emissions. And the big one here is purchased electricity, steam, heating and cooling. Also vehicles that, are not owned by the company, but driven by employees. Scope 3 is the value chain emissions. And these are what are produced by the organizations, suppliers, and customers. Most often when we do GHG inventories, we just do Scope 1 and Scope 2. Scope 3 emissions are very hard they're easy to identify, but hard to get the data, and it takes several months and a lot of resources to nail those down. And actually, Scope 3 emissions can be further classified into upstream activities, and I've got this figure here. Capital goods, business travel, waste generated in operations, employee commuting, and so on. And downstream activities like use of what happens to the sold products, what happens after the product has been sold and used and its end of life, and so on. So that's the downstream activities. And as you can see, getting data from the upstream or downstream Scope 3 emissions is a lot more difficult, which is why most organizations, limit their GHG inventories to Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Next slide, please. And, what goes into creating a GHG inventory is that we collect, the basic data. So first of all, we identify the emission sources for the organization. So we say, do we have natural gas boilers? No. Do we have fleet vehicles? Yes. And so, we take emissions from that and start calculating it. Then we go to Scope 2 and say, we buy electricity. So can we get our utility bills? So on. So we have to identify the data sources, emission sources, and then also, where we are going to get the data from. And once we get all of those, we start reconciling the energy uses with the internal reports, such as, invoices like utility bills, fuel usage records, etc. And then we set up a single tool, like an Excel spreadsheet, and we document our methodology and calculate our GHG emissions. Next slide. This is, Fishbeck, and I'm sure others offer it too, but I am aware of Fishbeck, so I'll talk to Fishbeck. We offer holistic ESG consulting services. We have, in fact, just launched our ESG service line. There is a growing expectation for all organizations to communicate their ESG goals, metrics, practices, and performances to their stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, from commercial clients, industrial clients, as well as, municipal counties and tribal clients as well. So we at Fishbeck then can do as much or as little as our clients want. Some of the clients want us to do everything from soup to nuts. So, we help you to identify the topics and metrics that are relevant to you, collect and compile the information, develop the ESG program, write the ESG report, and help you tell your story. But some other clients might already have an ESG program in place and are just looking to us to help them enhance it, or looking to us to fill some information gaps that they might have. Or it could be as small as just come and do my GHG inventory and I can do the rest. So we can do, as I'm saying, as much or as little for your ESG program as possible. But we do have the capacity and capability to offer holistic ESG consulting services. That actually ends my presentation. And thank you for your attention to my topic today.
Thank you,
And thank you for
Vimala.
moving the slides, Kendall.
Oh, yeah. So we do have a few minutes for questions right now, if anybody has any. I didn't see any in the chat, but feel free to raise your hand or come off mute, or we can just continue with Andrew's presentation and we'll have time at the end for questions for both presenters.
I have a question. This is Leslie. Yeah, great presentation. It was helpful to get so much background. I guess my question is, what is the relationship between ESG and the UN Sustainable Development Goals? And is there pros or cons going one way or the other to document?
There are several different international organizations that are trying to standardize the metrics, let's say. So there is relation in that we are all talking about the environmental topics that I talked about. There is no one good way to report it. So whatever works for your organization, that's what I would pick. You could use the GRI methodology, or you could use the UN's methodology. EU has their own methodology. So there are so many out there. Everybody is trying to standardize the methodology, but there isn't one right now that trumps any other. So I would just pick a methodology that works for your organization and go with that.
Great. And do you have any book recommendations for helping to understand reporting? For the ESGs, at least.
Yeah, I don't know about a book, but I would start with the GRI, Global Reporting Index website. And they have some very good information there. But I don't know of any actual book. I could research it and get back to you if you like.
Oh, it's great. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I guess why don't we move on to Andrew's presentation, and then again, keep asking questions in chat, and we'll have time at the end.
Great, thank you. So happy to be here. Really excited for this. Been waiting all week to talk to Detroit, so thank you for having me. My name is Andrew. I work with Sapient, and today I'm going to do sort of like a Shark Tank QVC mixed with a software demo. So a lot of ground to cover, but I'll do it quickly. That way, if there's any questions or you want to see anything more in depth, we can. What you're seeing here is this era that we believe in. It's energy enlightenment. And when we think about it, there's constant era at any time in human history where there's been some kind of innovation that's pushed things forward and created a new tomorrow. Detroit Bad Boy Pistons, I mean, you name it. So when we talk about this, we view it as organizations that have these really huge decarbonization targets. They want to be operationally excellent. We believe that the way to reach energy enlightenment is to have granular data that allows you to access equipment level performance like you never have before. And when we look at the current state of things, which I'm not telling anybody anything new here, but we've identified a gap. And when we look at facilities teams and sustainability teams, they're being asked to do so much at the same time, whether it's save the planet and be burdened with the company's goals in that realm, or just make things more efficient around the buildings. Have a safe workplace, have equipment that has long uptime, making sure everyone's comfortable. You're doing all of these things, and even reporting back on these successes and these reductions. You're making all of these changes with surface level data, typically a utility bill, or something very overall broad spectrum. What we believe in is the ability to get deeper than that to help answer the question in the top left. And I feel like the question in the top left is your litmus test to know if you have enough data to reach your decarbonization goals. So if you can't answer, I need to do blank project first because it has this impact and will help us hit this particular goal, I would argue that you don't have the depth of data to be successful and that your goals are in jeopardy. And again, in that bottom right-hand corner, you'll see like the surface level data component is so important to really isolate and know when you're in that situation, because reversing it is actually pretty simple. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. The common projects that we hear the most often, they're all necessary. Like, you have to change your light bulbs to LED light bulbs. Like, yes, you have to get solar panels. You have to look at renewable energy. The issue here, the underlying issue is that if you don't have granular equipment level data that can be processed in real time, the different areas of your building and where to concentrate. If you don't have those things, all of these projects don't reach their maximum potential, and they have a lot of opportunity to actually be misses, and you can overspend, and you can allot your resources and your budget to things that aren't going to move the needle as much as some other items. The key element to what we do is when we're able to watch your building and we're able to see these patterns and each equipment doing what it does and working in real time, we're able to then make recommendations on how to optimize your facility. And typically, about 70% of our recommendations require no capital expense whatsoever. These are all operational moves that you just literally don't have any visibility into right now. It's impossible. If you're working off a utility bill, it's impossible to make the right changes, operationally speaking. And one study that I'll highlight in particular, a client of ours in Lakeland, Florida, they have a distribution center that's relatively large. And one of their things was they had this HVAC unit. After we installed, they see this HVAC unit that's running and peak, and they're trying to figure this thing out. What we're able to do is we're able to shine a light on a particular asset now, and they were able to go into that area and see that the thermostat was above a battery charger. So it was causing the HVAC to just constantly overproduce. There's no way that you'd be able to find that just based off a utility bill, or even a building automation system for that matter. So when we look at this and we talk about energy enlightenment, how we can collaborate and maybe not necessarily replace everything, but look for ways to optimize, look for ways to get creative, do these treasure hunts that Kendall mentioned, do that in real time, do it anytime you want. So that's what our platform does at the end of the day, and the impact that it provides. And you can see on the right, install time here was 2 days for a whole facility. They're minimally disruptive what we do. And the game plan that we came up with over the course of 8 weeks, you can see it, the optimization opportunities, almost 500,000 kWh, and then over 600,000 pounds of CO2. And this is a executable plan. There were 3 items out of like 15 that required some level of investment. So this gives you the opportunity to really understand your building, how it works, how it consumes energy, and then start to understand how you can reduce it and meet some of those goals. This is actually how the platform looks at a sample size, same facility here. And what you're seeing is green is good, even though it has a down arrow, that means you're reducing energy. What we do is when we shift to this dynamic of going equipment by equipment, circuit by circuit, we can start to identify key areas of improvement. So you'll see top energy consumers there. We have names of actual units. So you can see RTU 22. I can compare RTU 22 to RTU number 1 and determine which one is producing the best level of efficiency. Let me show you exactly like what I mean here. So when I move over, in this capacity, we have this set up, and this is our training center where we coach folks on how to install. What you're seeing here is we have the utility meter. And what we'll do is we'll start to plug in right after this this demarcation point here. This is our pulse meter. So this helps measure exactly what the output is of the building and how it's utilizing that energy. And then we also have this meter, which like I didn't connect. But this is our shadow meter, and this will confirm if the utility bill is accurate. So we're doing 2 things here. Number 1, we're measuring the amount of energy that's coming through the building and being able to understand that in the cloud in real time. And then we're also evaluating, is the utility bill correct? Are we getting the right pull? And this will act very much like the utility meter in itself. So once we have that set up, we're going to go over here now to our area that has the actual equipment. So you can see here what it is. We'll have the opportunity to take any type of amp draw from equipment. So they get even bigger than this. We have a 5,000 amp that's like, you know, as big as an iPad. But essentially what you're seeing here is we'll take these CTs, we'll clamp them onto the wires in a panel, and we'll fully digitize a panel within 30 to 60 minutes. So what's key here is that we typically don't need to shut things down. It's a minimally invasive sort of process. And when we clamp on, within 15 minutes, we'll start to see real data. The way that it works is it'll go from, and I'll show you in a panel, but it'll go from here into our military grade independent IoT network. And this will allow us to transmit directly into the cloud live from the panel across the facility. And I'll also show you in the software, you can access it anywhere in the world, you know, just as long as you have a browser and a login. And then this is what the panel itself would look like. So I'll try to get it a little bit closer so you can see it. But I would take this CT here. So this is a 80 amp CT, if you can see it, and simply just clamp it right on to the panel. This is not a live panel, guys. Don't worry. I will be okay after this meeting. And then we have this. We're going to connect it in. It'll go down into one of our platform transmitters. And then we take this, which is our IoT network, and we just pop it right on the side. And now it's going to be able to transmit directly into the cloud. It takes about 15 minutes to get this data to pull. And once it does, then we can go into the software program and actually pull that data live. So now we'll be able to say, you know, if this is a lighting circuit, let's say, you know, we'll be able to determine, hey, why are the lights on at 3 o'clock in the morning? Nobody's here. Oh, it's because we set up the building automation system with the wrong clock. And now we have to go in and just change that. And now we've cut down 2% of our energy for that one particular asset. So I'll show you a little bit more in depth in the software. I can pause here. I'm curious, does anybody have any questions on the hardware or want to see like anything additional of what I just showed you?
Andrew,
No.
are we supposed to be seeing something besides your PowerPoint?
Oh yeah, were you looking at my camera?
Oh, that's better.
Are you did everybody catch that? I can go through it real quick.
Okay.
I was watching Andrew. It was just a smaller
Okay.
window, but
Okay.
yeah.
So Andrew, this is
yeah.
Laura. You can take basically kind of an advanced energy metering process where you can take and divide each circuit by, for example, HVAC, lighting, plug loads, all that stuff, so that a client or an owner can get that specific information, including the rooftop units, like you documented in your spreadsheet. Do you use, like, is it a pulse? And forgive my language. Is that what you use? Is I'm not good at.
Yeah.
I'm not a mechanical
Yeah.
engineer, so.
Oh, me either. Me either. Yeah. So this
Or
is
electrical.
this is our pulse meter here.
Okay.
So inside of this box. Let's see if I can show you.
Yeah.
And then our CTs are bidirectional CTs.
Bidirectional.
I'll
Okay.
show you those up close. But yeah, that's the pulse meter that we have there. The one that I showed earlier was the shadow, and then this is the actual CT. This is a 80 amp CT that you can just clip right on. And yeah, we have all different varieties. So the key concept here is any equipment, any building, any industry, Detroit Lions Stadium, Ford Field, all the way to a logistics, all the way to a manufacturing facility that prints out lottery cards, retail, you name it. So it truly doesn't matter what the equipment is or what the building is. All that matters is that you have a panel that we can clamp to, and I think the rest kind of goes from there.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. When we go into the software, this is what it would look like in real time. Unlimited seats. So no matter who wants to access this, we would just need an email address to set it up. By the way, I meant to mention, I do have a freebie that will make sense after I show this. So just I'll walk you through it. But when we look at this screenshot here, you can see the overall consumption going down. You can see exactly what it is per square foot. The key concept is that we're able to determine any type of date range. So if you wanted to find out, are we using more energy today than we were a year ago at the same day and time, you're able to do that live. You can export it to any type of report that you want. So a lot of the facilities folks that I talk to have to come up with these monthly reports, and it takes them hours to do. This is something where literally you click right here and download it and you're all set. You just put it into your PowerPoint and you're good to go. Here you can see the different top energy consumers. But once we hook into the system here, when we break this down, we can see each individual piece of equipment in the facility, and then be able to open something like this up, where now we can determine at different times during the day, how did this unit perform? Is it adhering to the schedule that we'd like? Can we change things up? What types of adjustments can we make? And then we fully digitized the panel here. So within 30 to 60 minutes, we're able to have this type of platform where you're able to now, instead of having those paper diagrams on the inside of the panel door, you have something that's digital, that lives on forever, that makes things much more safe, much more streamlined to work through. And usually at this point, the facilities guys say, like, when can I sign up? Because this is where you really make your job a lot easier from that perspective. Let me move my camera here real quick. So when I go into here, we can do all kinds of different things to set this up. Typically, when we go in, we'll have our own install team that will do all this hard work for you, and then a building science team on the back end that can actually recommend, those different changes and understanding how you can lower your energy usage. When we look at equipment, we'll have every single piece of equipment, where they are in the facility, different tags there. So if we saw something, if our building science team saw that there was some sort of issue or something that you should consider, they'll tag it here and you'll be notified. That way you can address that, or ask them for help, or whatever their recommendations are. And here you'll actually have digitized panels, so you can go through and know exactly which panel is where, what types of equipment are hooked up to it, understanding the full schematic of exactly what you're looking at here. So as you click through, this would be the entire facilities panels. And as you pop in, it's pretty self-explanatory here, where you're able to say, got it, RTU 19, there we go. So we can do this live as you walk through the facility on an iPad. Just as long as you have a browser, you'll be all set and ready to go. The last piece that I'll show you here is actually, I'll show you two quick things. We have live carbon reporting. So a lot of the times there's this concept of guesswork and being able to essentially say, I have this level of emissions and I'm doing math and I have these calculations. This gives you per equipment in real time, once it stops being finicky here. You saw the flash. Hold on. I think it's because it's a little bit. Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I
Okay,
can hear you.
I think my internet is messing up here. There we go. All right. So this is real carbon reporting data. So this shows you exactly what the emissions are per square foot, your intensity, and you can again, change this up any type of date range that you would like. This is live. Our third-party data source helps pipe this information into the system. You can fully export it, but I think that this gives that extra level of detail. I mean, like I read sustainability reports all day long, and this is the type of item that you can put into these reports that's a little bit less of the vague language. You know, it's more granular, it's more precise. You can indicate exactly what's happening in each building, and really strive towards that operational excellence while also meeting sustainability goals. Last piece here is this explore feature where we can just simply compare any type of assets that we'd like against each other. You can see flag for commissioning here. So the building science team saw this hot water heater and said it's worth a look based on its performance. So now we have all of those rooftop units that I just selected. We can now see them all on one grid and be able to ascertain exactly what's going on with performance, and be able to reduce energy accordingly. That's what I have for today. The piece of the freebie, I guess you would call it, is that if anybody would like to have their panels digitized, so essentially we would take your panel schedules, or sometimes folks will actually like walk around their building and take pictures of the panels and send them to me. If you're able to do that, what we'll do is we'll set you up with a login, and you can at least have this free of charge. So you'll be able to access this, be able to log in and see all of your panels fully digitized. And then if you decide that you would like to explore more about the CT clamps and the metering and all of those different things, be happy to help you understand how that works and the process and the timing. But typically this is a solution that takes a couple days, not weeks and months and years. This is a pretty fast moving thing. We work with everybody. So building automation systems, doesn't matter who it is. We play nice with every single type of vendor. So, so I guess I'll stop there. Any questions, happy to answer them. Happy to dig deeper.
Andrew, I'm trying to look on the website a little bit more about your company. We're very interested in this kind of technology. We've been actually meeting with some folks because, you know, we're trying to really iron out the advanced energy metering options for LEED with the various industries we work with, with clients. We're architects and engineers, and we're really looking for something that can kind of, we have national clients, we also have, you know, one-off clients, but we do a lot of industrial, a lot of retail, commercial, government work, period. How far does your reach range? I see you worked in Florida. Do you also work outside the United States?
Oh yeah. We're actually it's funny you mentioned that we have a big meeting for APAC, and they want to meet with us on Thanksgiving because the schedules are so crazy. So it's timely. But yeah, anywhere in the world, any type of building. We even are hopefully working with one of the largest shopping mall companies in Chile. So there's no bounds to what we do. And typically for install, if we can't have a certified technician that lives in that area that we've trained, we'll just simply send folks to that location. But usually we have folks in the area that can install.
Thank you. I put it in the chat, but if you could please put your contact information in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I put my email in there. It's just my first last name at sapient.industries. And yeah, happy to take, if anyone wants to email pictures or panel schedules, just let me know what email address that you would like as your login. Again, unlimited users, as many logins as you want. But once I get those panel schedules and pictures from you, we'll put them in the software, and then you'll have that fully digital panel. Yeah, Jim was mentioning Publicis Sapient, and that we're not that big yet. But once this meeting goes well, look out. Any other questions? Anything that I can answer or help build use cases? Great.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any other questions. We're wrapping up early, but again, Any questions for the presenters? Feel free to ask now. But I think, Vimala, do you mind putting your contact info in the chat as well?
Sure, I can type it.
That way, if anybody needs to or would like to follow up with you.
So Bimla, if I can ask you a quick question, this is Laura again, sorry, I'm kind of hogging this, but
Mhm.
currently we do our greenhouse, we have offices in the UK, Canada and the US, and we're currently using getting our greenhouse gas inventory out of a company out of the UK just because they're so far ahead of where we are in the United States. Can your company reach that far? Because we love Fishbeck. We work with you guys a lot, and I'm just curious how far your reach is.
We can.
Okay.
We can definitely do that. And, we would love to work with multinational companies and, help you, not just with your facilities here in the United States, but anywhere else in the world. So,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I guess I had a quick question.
Mhm.
How many do you see a lot of buildings in Detroit reaching out to either of you? Have you worked with any property owners in the city of Detroit?
Not in the city of Detroit for us.
Okay.
We have worked with several other municipalities. Right off the top of my head, we've Muskegon. We've done the city of Muskegon. We are right now working on a climate action plan for the Gun Lake tribe. A very comprehensive plan that includes not just the topics, metrics, and targets, but also solutions on how to reduce it. So a very comprehensive climate action plan.
That's great.
Yeah, for us it was Detroit Lions, and we're almost at the finish line with the Detroit Smart Parking Lab. So fingers crossed there. That'll be a really exciting project if anybody follows that facility.
Is that Dan Gilbert's project? I feel like I saw something in the news this week, the local news.
Yeah, so there's also going to be a building too, apparently, that's in the same type of scope. So I'm not familiar. I'll have to research exactly who's responsible. But yeah, we've been working on that for a couple months now with a third party. So yeah, it should be like really exciting if that keeps going the way it is.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the presenters before we wrap up?
I appreciate you, Kendall. It was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, same. Those were both really great presentations. Thank you for taking the time today to present to everybody who was able to attend. And we will get this posted on our Detroit 2030 YouTube. So I will send out the link to everyone who registered once I have that ready. And I guess hope everybody has a great weekend and a nice Thanksgiving next week.
Thank you all, and thank you for having me, Kendall. This has been very informative, Andrew's topic, and I had fun talking about my passion. So thank you all, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.